All right, it's a beautiful day here just south of Asheville, and we just finished up these cable rails that I purchased on Amazon. They are the no swag rails that, for the most part, look pretty seamless. They have the bolt on one end and the opposite threaded bolt on the other end, and you screw those in. I think when I looked on Amazon, there's several different manufacturers. This one, I'm sure they're all Chinese, but is the KJXXKJ brand. And compared to the Atlantis systems that I've used, this one's not half bad. This deck we finished with the handrails, the wood, all the railings, the wood, the cable rails, everything was less than $1,500 in materials. So a really good price, in my opinion. I know there's more than one way to skin a cat, but I was going to show you because I could not find anything on it online, on YouTube or anything before I purchased it. I'm going to show you what we did. I'm sure there's other ways that you can do it, but this is what we did. This did take my brother and I 2 days. We are both general contractors and do this for a living, or this kind of work. So, you know, a homeowner is probably going to take considerably more time. But all in all, looks like a good product to me. We did actually half of this during Thanksgiving. And then it is now the middle of January, and we have come back to my parents' house and finished the rest of it. I've seen no rust on it whatsoever. Everything looks to be perfect condition. So I do believe that it probably is some form of stainless. I don't know if it's 316 as advertised, but it is some form of stainless. You can see right here, we used 4x4s, and we went through those 4x4s. The reason for that is I went off the Atlantis specs, and we don't want any span bigger than 6 feet. We also spaced them at 3 inches, which is what Atlantis recommends, because when you push them apart, you can get them farther than 4 inches. So you cannot put them at 4 for them to meet code. This deck does not need a railing because it's less than 30 inches off the ground. But as my parents are getting older, they need something to support them. So we were in our outside post, like this one right there we go, is a 6x6, 4x4s for what I call the spreaders, and then a 6x6 on this end. We've got a 2x6 laid flat with a 2x4 stand upright underneath it to keep it from sagging or bowing, and then we ran our lines down from there. Comes in your kit. When you order these things, the ones we ordered, you get 30 rights and 30 lefts. For this deck, we used 90 total, so we used 3 packages. We had a few left over here. We did order these little ferrules for the 4x4s that we went through, just to give it a better look. With the amount of cuts we made, you would probably need 2 or 3 cutters. We managed to get it with 1, but we probably needed a second one. And the third one probably would have been better. As you can see here, that is a very good cut on that line. If it starts to fray, it makes it really hard for this to slide in. And then you have problems. These little cutters get spurs and burrs and whatever nicks in them, and then they just don't cut correctly. We managed to make it work, but it really was a pain. We also ordered crimpers online from Amazon when we purchased it, hydraulic crimpers. When they came, they did not have a 1/8 crimper fitting or crimp space, so we had to run to Lowe's and get these manual crimpers. They worked perfectly, but as you can see there, that smallest hole is 1/8, and that's what we needed to crimp these things with. You can see here, I've got one of them set up that just slides right in. This is just for demonstration purposes. If you look at the box says measure your total length and then deduct 1.5 inches. What we found is 1.5 inches was pretty good. The longer the run, like from this here, we've got 2 6-foot sections, so that's about a 12-foot run, or a little less than 12 foot. You probably used 2 inches off. The longer the run, the more we would take off. And I'll show you when we get down there what that results in. But you basically cut your line, you slide these together, and then you crimp them. We used a level and made a jig for our holes here, so that we could line it all up. Everything would be exactly the same. I think we ended up at 3¼ inches. Pushed it to the top and left the bottom, no matter what it was. Whatever the distance was at the bottom was fine. It was less than 3 inches. They do send you a pre-drill bit, which worked fantastic. I think we had 3 of those. They send you these little wrenches, which worked fine. We did find, luckily we got a bunch of them because we ordered so many packs, but we did find that one of them was a little small and wouldn't necessarily fit over this groove right there. That is, let's see if you can see it. See that groove right there that is made from the factory, that's what that fits in. It wouldn't fit it exactly, so luckily we had extra wrenches and we're able to use those. Let's see what else I can show you here now. As we did the install, we did do them on the stairs, as you see right there. We were able to drill them in at an angle. It probably was not the correct angle, but once they were in, we were able to bend them to make them look as good as possible as far as getting the right angle. These are pretty tight. They do have some movement in them. I think probably they will need to continue to tighten them over the next little while as things tend to shrink and temperatures change. If you go in here, you will see on this one, if I can get it to zoom, this is our crimp right here. And then this is the flat part right here. Let me see if I can get one in the sun. Okay, this one here. You can see our crimp right there, and then the flat part right there. You see no threads whatsoever. And that's where the spacing comes into play. When you measure it out, some of ours you will see have threads showing. Some of them do not. And I don't think it's noticeable, in my opinion. Let's see, none of these really have threads. That one right there, you can see has threads. So it still has some room to go in, but it's already pretty doggone tight. It could probably be tightened up a little bit. But if all your measurements are the same measurement, then you will have the same amount exposed. You can see here in these 4x4s that we went through, we used these ferrules, as I was mentioning earlier. We drilled a 1/4 inch hole from each side, because you're never going to get it lined up right probably. 1/4 inch, half, or about 3/4 of the way through this way, 1/4 inch, 3/4 of the way through that way, got them to line up. You're just pushing this 1/8 inch line through it so it goes through easily, and then we slide these back, take a little hammer and knock them into place. They should go nowhere, but it does give it a more finished look, a better look, in my opinion. We've still got to lag these 6x6s in, keep them tight. But other than that, one thing I did mention is we did run into some where this factory piece got as close as it is here, or even farther in. Like this one right here is very close to the end. What we did, and luckily with that crimper that we used, which creates this crimp mark right here, the wrench fit that perfectly. So we tried to keep all of our crimps within maybe 1/4 inch of the end. And that wrench would allow us to continue to push that threaded rod in farther. We did have a couple instances where we messed up, and we put two of the same thread on. I think if you had to do it, you could reuse these. If you crimp out on the outside edge, you could take a grinder and or a cutting wheel. If your crimp is here, you could cut it off below that crimp and then re-crimp it in this area. But as you see, if I can get them lined up here, those threads go the same way. Let's do these two right here. If you look at these two threads together, they create a V. One goes one way, one goes the opposite way. It is imperative, I would say, for you to have two people doing this. Basically, you're going to get it started, and it's got to go in. I would say it doesn't have to be the same exact time, but it has to be relatively closely. If it's a long span, you can maybe do 4 or 5 turns on one side, then go to the other side and do 4 or 5 turns. But if you've got two people turning at the same exact time, then they cancel each other out. I did have an occasion where on these short ones right here, I was doing them by myself, and I tightened one too far, and it actually kinked the metal line, and it was not repairable. So I had to completely redo that one. But I would highly recommend at least 2 people. If not, you're going to be doing a lot of walking back and forth to get these things tightened up. Other than that, I think that's about all we ran into. The system is a good system. I think, you know, like I said, I have used the Atlanta system on customers' houses before. It is a good system too, but I would say to do this deck, we'd be looking at 2 or 3 times the cost of what we spent on this one. It's very expensive, and the turnbuckles that use the swag buckles, they're bigger. So, you know, this is more streamlined. The threaded rods that go in are basically the same size as the line themselves. So there's very little difference when it comes to diameter of size. Just to give you an idea from the outside of what it looks like, I think it turned out pretty good. My parents are very happy, but you know, standing 15 feet away, you can't even hardly see those rails. You can see them when the sun shines on them, but other than that, they're pretty invisible. So hope this helps, and I appreciate it.